So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a new RMarkdown document. I'll just call it report. That's fine for now. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to the article, and I'm going to just copy some of their code. So let me copy, for example, let me just get the raw version. I'm just going to copy all of this, and I'm going to go back into RMarkdown and paste that in. And I'll go ahead and save my report now. I'm assuming folks have used RMarkdown before, so I'm not going to go through the specifics of it. But if you haven't, seek out some resources covered in my fundamentals course. It's definitely a prerequisite to understand what we're doing here. So first thing, actually, I realize this is code here, so I'm going to put this in a code chunk. All right, so let me just look at this. And actually, I think I need to load a few packages. Yeah, so he's using, there is a package called 538. And actually, is that it? No, that's, oh, maybe that is it. Actually, yeah, that's fine. I'll just make it from scratch. So there's a package called 538. Oh, looks like there's someone else. Let me leave this open so I can let people in. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a code chunk and load my packages. So I'll load the tidyverse, and then I'll load 538. Obviously, you have to install them if you don't already have them. So I've gone ahead and run those. Within the 538 package, there are a bunch of data sets. And the one that we're using is called bad drivers. So by loading this package, you get access to all of these data sets. So I'll just pop this one up so we can kind of take a look at it. And it's a bunch of data about, like, I think it was an article like which state has the worst drivers or something like that. So you can see we have state, I'm assuming that's like number of drivers per 1,000 or something like that. I'm not going to actually worry about the content because it's really kind of irrelevant. But just know that we have some data that we can use here. All right, I'll go ahead and close this because I don't actually need that. So let's take a look now at the YAML. First thing, title, author should look totally familiar, look like any other RMarkdown document you have worked on. The date is actually interesting because it is done using what's known as inline R code. So you know that, I assume that you can put R code within code chunks, but you can actually also type R code within the text. And to do that, you just type that backtick there in the beginning and then backtick at the end. And then whatever is in the middle here just shows up. It's actually run, essentially. And so this, for example, you can see it when I ran it. Down here, it shows up as that. It's just a way to kind of dynamically put the date. So when you run this, basically the date would show up as today. Not super relevant to what we're doing, but it's kind of interesting. So output, we'll just make it an HTML document. The thing that's most relevant now is this params. So this is where we're getting into the idea of parameterized reporting. So what we do is we set parameters early on, and those are essentially variables that we can then use later. So you can see, for example, we set a parameter of state, and then the reason we have Virginia here is because you have to have a default value. And so in this case, the default value is Virginia. And note when I ran this code chunk, it also actually ran this. And so now I have an object over here called params. If I open it up, you can see it's actually a list. It's not a data frame, so it's not a two-dimensional object. It's, it's a more complicated data structure. But what you see is that we have state here is the name within our parameter, and then the value here is Virginia, right? And that becomes relevant because then we can use it later on. So for example, if I type params $, I now get access to any of my parameters. So if I type params state, I get Virginia returned, okay? And that's helpful because I can use it, for example, to filter my data set. So remember I had this bad drivers data set, which looked like this, but if I only want to make a report for the state of Virginia, I want to filter it. So here, what we're doing is we're taking the bad drivers data frame or data set, and then we're filtering it so that state equals params $state. And remember that params $state is Virginia in this case. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run that. And let me take a look at my data frame. So now I have drivers subset, which only shows for the state of Virginia. Let me run this. It'll just create a bar chart, and then I'll, oh wait, remove ticks. Let me actually take that off. That's part of the Urban Institute package that they use for their, they have a ggplot theme essentially. I'm not gonna worry about that for now. So you can see we have now made a bar chart based on this drivers subset data frame. So we're piping it down here, creating a new variable, then selecting a few variables. They're using gather, which is, here, I'll even run it to this point. It's an older version of a function to take your data from wide to long. If you are working more recently, you probably would use pivot longer, but gather works as well. And then we're just basically using that to, here's our data, and then we're piping it in here to make a bar chart. Okay. Let me actually pause for a second and see if there are any questions that have come up for folks. Either unmute yourself, put in the chat. Let me see if anything is unclear up to this point. All right, not seeing anything, so I'm assuming folks are good. Again, feel free to interrupt me at any point. So at this point, what I could do is I could knit this. I'll go ahead and knit this. And you can see now I get report.html. Let me go ahead and open that. And I get my report. Actually, let me, oh, I don't have a setup code chunk. Gosh, I don't know how to, I never make the setup code chunk by hand. So let me just make a new RMarkdown document and copy that. That's weird. I didn't know that if you didn't have a setup code chunk, it would actually knit. I would have expected it not to knit, but let me set warning equals false and message equals false. And same thing with echo, because basically back here we're getting warning messages, and then we're actually seeing the code, which I don't really need to see. I just used the keyboard shortcut to knit. I could have hit the button as well, same thing. All right, so there is my report, which is really just a graph. All right. Now, if you wanted to make a different report, you could just do Maryland, knit it again, go back here, and now I have a report for Maryland. That's not really what we want to do because it's not going to make much sense. It's not going to, I mean, it'll be more efficient than doing it totally by hand manually, but we don't really want to have to change that 50 times and hit knit each time. So obviously there's going to be a much more efficient way to do this. So the way we're going to do this is if you have only ever used RMarkdown in this way where you're actually knitting, there's another way that you can knit, and that is you can knit using code. So I am going to make a new file, a new RScript file, and I'll save this. And I'm just going to call this render. And this is where I'm actually going to write the code that will generate all of my reports. So if you scroll down on this document, their chart looks a little different because they're using their Urban Institute ggplot theme, but same idea. Let me scroll down here. So Aaron called his file iterate.r. Let me go over here. I'm just going to copy all this in, and then I'll actually walk through it. I just called mine render. It's the same thing. Actually, you know what? Let me close this. Just to make it really obvious, I'll just call it iterate. All right. I'm going to go ahead and restart my session just so you know that this data here is not what we're actually using. So let me restart my session. The other thing is you don't actually need to have your at this point, I don't even need to have my RMarkdown document open. I can close that. So what I'm going to do, yeah. So I am going to essentially create a data frame that we're going to then use to create, that will then basically provide the data, including, as you'll see here, the parameters that will be passed to this our Markdown document. It'll be passed to it each time, and then it'll generate one report for each state. So the way that Aaron does this is, whoops, I need to load my packages. So he does it by calling bad drivers $state. So, if I were to open bad drivers, you see he's just getting this column. The other way to do that, do the same thing, is if you just did pull state, that will just, the way I think about it is if your data frame is two-dimensional, pull will pull out one of the columns, do the same thing. So if you look over here now at state, it's actually what's known as a vector. So it's a one-dimensional vector. In colloquial terms, it's like a list of items. I don't actually tend to describe it that way because list has a very particular meaning in R, but essentially, it's just it's all the states. If I type now state, you'll see it shows up as all the states. So essentially we need to get a list of all the states, a list of all the states that we're going to use. So now what we're going to do, and let me actually do this one step at a time. I'm going to delete that line for now. Aaron is then creating a tibble, so essentially a data frame. And you can do that with this tibble function. That's just a function that makes a data frame. And then he's naming his variable. His first variable is going to be output file. And that is equal to, he's using the strc_c function, which just concatenates strings. So he's concatenating output, state, and then -driving.html. Let me go ahead and run that. And then let me open this reports data frame. So you can see he has output file equals, all of these things. And actually, sorry, I'm going to pause for a second because I think there's one thing I want to, that'll help this to make more sense before I even actually do the iteration. Let me actually just load the RMarkdown package. So you probably know RMarkdown as this, but there's actually a package that underlies that. And we're going to use, there is a function called render from the RMarkdown package. So if I open up the help file for render, what you will actually see are a bunch of arguments. And essentially, this render is a code-based way of doing the same thing that we did here by just hitting the knit button. So the most important thing here is input. We have to tell it what is the file that we are inputting. So I'll call it report.rmd, although I think that's actually not going to work. And let me go ahead and run that and see what happens. Okay, yeah. So first thing it's telling me is the report.rmd does not exist because it's in a subfolder. So I need to call it 2020. What was it? Zero or that? Yeah, that worked. Okay, so if I just list the directory and then the file name and I do that, all it's done is it's rendered my report. So like, let me, for example, like, let me change this to Oregon. I'll save that. I'll render it. And then let me go back to this. And you can see now it's updated for Oregon. So essentially, this has done the same thing, like I said, as just going over to report.rmd and hitting that knit button. Okay. That's what I wanted to show you first. Within this, there are also a few arguments, things like, for example, output file, which if you have an eagle eye, you might actually note that output file is the name of that variable here, and that's going to become relevant when we're doing this iteration. Okay, so we made this reports tibble. Right now, we have a list of all of the output files that we want to use. And actually, I think I should also add this. I think I should probably make, actually, I was thinking I should make an output folder, but let me actually just leave it and see if I don't know if it'll create that folder if it doesn't exist, so I'll see. All right, so that's our output file there. I'm gonna actually make some slight changes to it. I'm gonna set my input here. Sorry, I have a very noisy squirrel right outside my window. I don't know if you can hear that, but so let me go ahead and run that now. I've made another variable called input just equal to that, because what's going to happen, you're probably realizing, is like we're going to use the same input for every report, but it's going to output differently for each time we run it. So the other thing we need to now do is we need to set parameters. So if you look, for example, at the arguments, there is a params here. And that's helpful because what we can do is we can then pass parameters when we are actually doing this iteration. So I actually need to, I'm gonna just go back to the article here and see exactly how he made it. So so what he's done is he's created params, and it's equal to map is a function from the per package. It's all about iteration. Let me actually run this real quick, open it up and then show you, and then I'll talk about it. So you can see what happens is we have input output file is the same, but then parameters, it says list state equals Alabama. Recall, like if we go back here, for example, and I have params, this is a list where state equals Oregon in this case. So you can see with this reports data frame, which has a list column, this is going to be what is passed to the parameters here. And so despite the fact that it says state Oregon, when I actually run it using code, it's going to take the parameters that I pass to it. So essentially what this is doing is it's like iterating over each row, and it's creating a list column where state equals, and the dollar, or not the dollar sign, the dot means basically it takes the thing that's passed in here, which is the state. So that's how you end up with state equals Alabama, state equals Alaska, state equals Arizona, etc. Okay. So now we have this reports data frame, and this is what we're going to use, and we're going to basically iterate over it to generate all of our reports. I'm going to change his code slightly because I did it just slightly differently. So what he's done now is he said, start with the reports data frame. He's using the pipe, so he's saying start with that. Then he's using pwalk. Pwalk is another function from the per data frame, or sorry, the per package. And what it does is it basically is telling us to essentially walk across each row in this case, do something, then go to the next row, do something, then go to the next row, do something. So with pwalk, we need to give it a function that we want it to do on each row. And so the function we want it to do is this render function. So here's render. You know, we did it just manually, or not manually, we did it with code, but we did it just for one report. This will run it. It will do the render function, but it'll take this as the input, create this as our output file using this or these parameters. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this. Okay, so that output directory does not exist. So let me make output. And now, what did I do wrong? What have I done wrong? It's telling me that does not exist. I think that does exist. If someone sees what I'm doing wrong, please feel free to chime in because I'm very confused as to what I have done wrong here. 2020 10/09 output. Okay, let me just try putting it here. Okay, I don't know why that wasn't working. Hold on, let me just stop it and I'll start it again in a second. I don't know why that wasn't working, to be honest. Maybe it doesn't like the numbers, but that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, that didn't work, but so I just made an output directory in the root of my project. And so now if I run that and I run reports pwalk render, you can see down here, it's doing my rendering. And if I go in my output folder, okay, I see. I know what it is. So actually it is putting them in the output folder in that directory. So I think my understanding is that your working directory when you're working with an RMarkdown document is whatever folder the RMarkdown document lives in. Whereas when you work with an RScript file, the working directory is whatever is the root of your project. So despite the fact that this is an RScript file, actually the working directory seems to be this 2020 10/09. I assume because we're like rendering it, and so somehow that sets the working directory as that. And in any case, I will go ahead and I'll delete the output folder here. I'll go into here. I'm going to go ahead and stop this because you don't actually need to see all of them rendered. But you can see, for example, here is Florida. Here is Georgia. And so you can make, like I could make 50 reports if I were to let this run automatically by just using these parameters. Yeah, Clint, I see your question. Very good question. I'll touch on that in just one second. So I've only done it really in one place. Like I've just used my parameter here. But you could use it throughout. And I could even say things like, this report is about our params state. So then it'll show up, if I knit this again, it'll show up for whatever state is the parameter when I render that. Clint, your question is, you said, I know you didn't specify anything in the arguments in render with pwalk or within pwalk. Could you explain further? So yeah, the reason we don't need to do anything, well, first of all, you're going to notice weirdly, and I don't know why this is the case, someone more sophisticated with R would have to tell you, but I don't know why you don't put the open parentheses, close parentheses when you list the function within pwalk. Let me actually just open that up real quick. No, I'm not going to go through it. So the reason I don't is because the render function, because these arguments or the name of the variables within the reports data frame match the arguments from render. So input matches input, output file matches output file, and params matches params. Because that they match, it basically just uses those. So that's why we don't have to give it any arguments, because the data frame that we pass to it already, that is essentially how we're giving it those arguments through that data frame. Does that answer your question, Clint?
Yeah, thanks, David. Great.
Yep. Yeah, so Elaine, what would the params column look like in the reports table if there were multiple parameters? Let's do that. So let's say, hold on, let me open up, let me look at bad drivers. So we got state. Just thinking about like what another parameter would be, because we don't have like, if we had like year or something like that. So, okay, this is like totally artificial, but wait, hold on. Number of drivers. This isn't a great data frame for it, or a great data set for it, but basically you would have like, let's say it was year. You could say year 2020, and then, I mean, this isn't actually going to work because this isn't how the data frame works, but like, actually, here's what I'll do. So I'll do mutate year equals 2020. So I basically just made a variable, and then I'm actually like I'll use that as my parameter. So then I could just copy this, and I could say filter year equals params year. It's not actually going to change anything. I just want to like have it work so I can show you what it means. Thanks, David. I see you're jumping off. So yeah, what I would do in my iterate.r function is add. Oh boy, I'm actually really not very good with lists. So let's see. I need to map state. I don't think I can do, actually Carrie and I were working on this, and I think this was actually where I was having trouble with this. So we're going to set here, I'll just add year equals 2020. Wait, did that not work? Oh, wait, sorry, I need to put this up above. Wait, that's not going to get me. Hold on 1 second. So I'll create a year. 2020, and then I'm going to pull year. So now I have a vector with 2020 repeated 51 times. So let's see if that works. No, so I can't put parameters. Oh, right, I can't put that more than once. So I think maybe if I do year list year equals, yeah, I think that worked. No, that did not work. Oh yeah, maybe I need to do map too. To be honest, I don't know off the top of my head, Elaine, because I generally just do reports with one. I'll actually briefly show you a way that I actually generated I created a package that does this, and it actually does this in, well, Carrie can feel free to chime in because I actually just showed it to her the other day. Because I find the process, like this process is a little cumbersome, to be honest. Let me delete that so it's back working. I actually created a package that does this. So it's called multi-report, and I can, I'll post a link to it. So within multi-report, there's literally just one function. And so what we need to do is we need to basically make a data frame where each column is the name of a parameter, and then all the values are the possible options. So here, let me just actually, so bad drivers, I'll do mutate. Let me just make it, and then I'll walk you through it and show you. So if I just do that, then I'll select state and year. I'll just call it like params df, so params data frame. So if I open this up, you can see I've got state and year. So now what I can do is I can run my multi-report function, and I need to give it the RMarkdown file, which is the same as the input. So this. The params data frame is just the name of whatever data frame I use. So this data frame that I just created. Let's see, you can also give it, you can, I think the report format, I can't remember how I set it up, if it does like whatever's in there by default, but I'll just do a HTML document, and then I'll do like report output directory. Oh wait, I forgot. I see. So I don't use this often enough that I remember exactly how I set it up, but you can, report title param is basically to tell it like which of the parameters do you want to use in the title. So it'll basically take the name of the, or no, sorry, it won't do that. It'll just take the name of the, of this, of whichever column, and it'll make that the name of your report. So for example, if I do, and we do have to do this in quotes for reasons, to be honest, I'm not certain of, you can add a report prefix, suffix, there's a, make your report title to lower. I'm not gonna worry about that. I'll do report output directory of output. Let me go into the output folder and just get rid of all of these. Let me see if that actually works. No. Output format. Wait, Carrie, this is the issue I had the other day. What am I doing wrong? I know I'm asking you to tell me what I did wrong with my package, but what if I just delete that? Yeah, okay, that works. So now what it'll do, oh, weird. For some reason now it's just putting them in the root. I don't know why. So now I'm generating all of these reports, and it's actually using both of my parameters. And actually here, let me just stop this so I can show, let me just like add a line in my report. The year for this report is our params $year. Well, let me just delete all of these again, just to like show that that will actually show up. So for example, if I open up the Alabama one, where did that go? Oh, showed up in the wrong screen. So here's Alabama, and you can see it says this report is about Alabama. The year for the report is 2020. So personally, again, I don't remember how I wrote it, and I struggled to write the function. But I think that, at least for me, this is an easier way if you have multiple parameters. And again, I'll link to this package. You can, you can use it, and it totally works. And if you have feedback on it, please let me know. I can incorporate other things into it as well. What other questions do folks have about this?
It looks like you were thinking it was knitting to your root directory instead of output. But when I look in your environment over to the right, it looks like it's knitting to output, as I would guess from that code string.
Yeah, so what happened with this code up here was that it knitted to this 2020 1009 output folder. Whereas my function just knits to the output. There are two output folders. There's an output in the root of the project, and then there's one in the 2020 1009. So it basically seems like it just goes to a different place depending on whether you're using my multi-report function or this kind of using the render function here. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why. Yeah, Susan, you asked about help understanding the function, the function of this, the little squiggle. So I am actually not super great with lists, but basically this is using the map function. Let me actually find. I don't actually, to be honest, Susan, I'm not totally sure. I know what it's doing, which is to say it's taking each state and then it's making a list column. I don't know why you need to have a squiggle there, but you do. So I'm sorry I can't actually help you with that because I just don't know the answer.
It's enough that you call it squiggle. I just love that. I just wanted to hear you say squiggle. So thank you.
I aim to please. Clint, you said, do you need to call the render function line 5 for the script to work properly? No, that was just, I'll delete that. That was just me showing like how you would knit one report because I wanted to demonstrate that before showing how it works across multiple reports. And just to be clear, like, people typically don't use a lot of loops in R, but you totally could do this as a loop if you're familiar with loops. So you could say like for I in 1 through length of, or no, actually, sorry, I could do n rows, or no, n row report. And then you could do like render, that I'd have to think about how to actually write the code, but essentially pwalk is the same as writing a loop. It does the same thing. So Hazel, you asked, could you make that a Word document? Yeah, you definitely could. So I think even actually, if I were to change this up here to docx and then run that, you can see now it's just making Word documents. Let me go ahead and stop that. In my package as well, you could, I don't know, where did that go? Oh, that's always what it is. So report format, for some reason it has to be in quotes. And again, I'm sorry, but I don't quite know why. It's a little bit beyond me. That would then make a whole bunch of Word documents if you just change the format there. It's just a slightly different way of doing it, but yeah, totally possible. Elaine, you said, so whatever you write in the render script will overwrite what's in the YAML of the RMarkdown of the Markdown document. Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. And just to be clear, like, because people always ask me about this, you have to have a default value here so that if you try and knit this individually, it'll work. But yes, when you call it from the render script or multi-report or whatever, it'll overwrite that. Great. Other questions, other things that have come up for folks as I was going through this? Well, I will do a few things after we're done. I am going to push all my code so it'll show up on GitHub. I'll post a link in the discussions here so you can see that. I will also post in this particular discussion a recording of the video so everybody has that. And I'll post a link to the multi-report. I'll post basically a ton of links in the office hours forum. Oh, I see one more question. Natalie asked, if you're using multi-report, does it still need to be in a separate R script file, or can this be done within the original RMarkdown file? Yeah, no matter what, it needs to be in a separate R script file, because the process of generating the report, or of actually the report template, is totally separate from the process of generating like multiple iterations of it. So yeah, you're always going to have those two no matter what. So just, let's see, one other thing. If you are able to join, I'd love to have everyone join again on October 23rd. If you have questions, things you would like to have me go over, please post something in here, and I will go through it at the next time, and that'll be kind of how I'll keep things organized. Oh, one more question. Once I have all the files in my R folder, what's the best way to push them to your audience? It depends, Melissa. If you are using GitHub, I could just, here, I'll even do it. I'll update this later. So, so I'm adding what's known as a commit message. I'm committing everything. Whoops, I meant to write generate reports. I won't worry about it for now, but basically now I can just push this to GitHub. It'll take just a second because it's got a bunch of stuff it's pushing, but then it'll just live on GitHub. So if it's a public project, I would honestly think you can just post it. If you do use GitHub, you can just post it. And the nice thing is these links are permanent. So this Alabama driving.docx, this link will always be the same. Oh gosh, I have to think about how you download it, but you can get a link basically. And so then anytime you would update it, it would just automatically update it. So update on GitHub, so then people can always get the most up-to-date project or up-to-date report. So otherwise, you now if I just look in my Finder here, R for the Rest of Us project or office hours, I just have them all here, and I could just email them or do whatever. Great. Well, I'm gonna have to run because I actually have another meeting as well, but thank you again to everyone for joining. I will post a bunch of stuff in the forum, and I appreciate you joining. And I will look forward to hopefully seeing a bunch of folks again next time. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.